I think I just prefer the feeling of the brake I have in my car. You know, when you drive different race cars, they're gonna have different softness or hardness, and I think it's of course it can be too soft and it can be too hard, but it's you know, sort of anywhere in between. You know, I think there's a window where you can drive it. Of course, you need to be able to drive different sort of brakes, because otherwise you can't drive these different cars. So I think the most important is that it's consistent. That's the most important, and not actually whether it's hard or soft, just as long as it's similar. It's a good question. I'd like to try them all, but if I could only try one, maybe it would be IndyCar. I just really like IndyCar. I like the tracks that they're racing on, and I like that everyone has the same car, and that's I think really interesting and makes more emphasis on driving well. I think you have more of a responsibility as a driver in IndyCar than perhaps you do in F1. Another very good question, a very difficult question, because there's so many cool race cars and tracks. But I would say the McLaren MP44 Formula 1 car at Suzuka would be my choice. I think that was a killer combination. The best ever race. I mean, there's races where, you know, before Formula 1 where, you know, I was just leading. I got pole position and was leading the whole race and won. And they might seem like the best races, but then I think often when you're starting from the back and you move through the field and come forward, then that kind of feels better because it's a bigger challenge. So, you know, I think I value races like that more. When you've been in an unlikely situation and you come out of it well, I think that's more rewarding than actually just getting pole position, leading the whole race. And of course, winning is the main thing, and that's what feels the best always. But if you win from an unlikely situation, then that feels even better. I think there's different uses for simulators. For driver, of course, it's a lot about learning the tracks. I think for engineers, at least in terms of Formula 1 simulators, there's a lot of stuff that they can learn. Basic stuff like, you know, gear ratios, but also mechanical setup and aero, just not maybe in full detail, but just like a broad overview of what the car needs. And then, you know, it's good to drive it in sim and actually see whether the car is massively oversteering or massively understeering, just to try and get it dialed in roughly. And then often nowadays when you get to the real track, it's actually more or less in line with what the sim does. So that's very impressive, I would say. These kind of simulators, that home simulators, I think what you get is just laps of repetition in driving a car. And I think motorsport is a little unique like that. It's not like tennis or football where you can pick up a racket or a ball and go and play every day. It's a little more difficult than that. It costs a lot of money to run a race car in real life. So what you're limited to is simulators if you want to have this repetition. And if you look at tennis or golf, any other sport than motorsport, the athletes practice hours and hours every day, and the only way you can do that as a racing driver is in a simulator.